Welcome to the Celebrating Women podcast, co-hosted by Mandee Montana and Ashley Fisher, a podcast that celebrates women, their issues, their thoughts, their lives, conversations that celebrate their gifts, their talents, their courage. It's the Celebrating Women podcast. Presented by Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler, Texas. Hey, it's Mandee Montana, and you know I love Hand & Stone. It's where I go to relax and take care of the majority of my skincare needs. And today I've got Sarah with me. Sarah, there is an amazing Black Friday special coming very soon, right?
Yes. Coming up for the holidays.
Tell me all about it, girl.
All right. So our members, you can purchase 3 gift cards for $139.90. So that's only $46 per service. So that is our cheapest rate of the entire year. Members can purchase as many gift cards as you want.
Ooh.
So you can keep them for yourself. You can gift them away. They make an amazing gift.
Yes.
Our non-members, so they are limited to only 2 sets, but you can purchase 2 gift cards for $119.90. So that's still cheaper than our member rate per month at only $59.95 per service.
That is incredible. And if somebody was like, hey, sounds like I need to be a member because I want unlimited gift cards, they could take care of that too.
Absolutely.
Okay, incredible. So I take advantage of this pretty much every year. I'm on some kind of list. In November, I get a phone call from you guys to remind me. Are you doing that again?
We are. So our pre-sales do start November 1st. We'll write your name down and how many sets of those gift cards that you want. And we'll verify the last 4 digits of the card that you do want to charge that to. We'll give you a reminder text before we do charge, but we charge them right before Thanksgiving so you can pick them up.
Perfect. Okay, so if somebody wants to be on that pre-order list like me, what number do they call and what do they need to ask for?
So call 903-345-6051 and just call and ask to be on the pre-sale list for the gift cards.
Perfect. Give me that number one more time.
903-345-6051.
Hey friends, it's Mandee. Just a quick note. Due to the busyness of the season, Ashley and I kind of needed a week of rest. So we are doing a replay of an episode that we both love and felt was really powerful from July. This is the practice of forgiveness.
Welcome back to another episode of Celebrating Women podcast. I'm Ashley Fisher. Hey, girl.
Today it's just us.
Just us.
You know, I really like that sometimes it's just us. I love our guests. I really, really love our guests. But the whole thing kind of started with a conversation between you and I just want to express my gratitude for how lovely you are to have a conversation with.
As are you, my friend. Yep.
Well, the other day we were kind of talking about life as we do. And something came up and we were like, this should probably be our next topic.
Yeah.
And Carlene kind of touched on it a little bit when she was here and she talked about life after divorce. But the word forgiveness.
And everybody in their car or in the park just went, ugh.
Stick with us.
Stay here.
Stick with us.
Hold on.
We're not going to harp on this for too long, but you know, it's a word that carries a lot of burden, right?
Yep.
And I think it's something that we talk a lot about, but we don't necessarily know how to put into action sometimes. Or for myself, I find that like, oh, I should just forgive this person. I'm like, what does that look like? Like how do I just forgive them? You know, like, I mean, what does that look like for you, Ashley? What's the start? What do you think?
Goodness, that's just that's a loaded question.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot
No,
with that, but I feel the same way. It is a loaded question.
It
like
is.
And I think other people feel the same way that you're feeling right now.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, how would I describe that?
Yeah, I think that, you know, going back to kind of, you know, there's that saying like unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to drown or to die.
Yeah.
You know, forgiveness is never for the other person because more than likely, sometimes we get in situations where we need someone's forgiveness. We feel it. We're like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Will you please forgive me? But in so many situations, it's like this covert act that you have to do because people do drive-bys in our life all the time. They hit us unknowingly, and they're going on with their life happy, hunky-dory, and we are left with the carnage. And forgiveness comes into play, and I think it's hardest in that situation when the person that hurt us is off living their life.
And did it unintentionally?
Unintentionally, or just, that's just how I am, or they don't know, you know?
Yeah.
And we are left in this place of, I either choose to release this person and forgive them, or I am going to be held captive. And I have, in my life, I just don't want to be held captive by anybody. That said, I think that it's a process. I think it is acknowledging, number one, that somebody did something to hurt you. And then number two, getting to a place where you process that. You feel all the feelings. You feel the hurt. You feel the rage. You feel the justice-oriented part of you just bursting into flame and how you don't think that that was right. You feel all of those things. Mm-hmm. And you recognize that we are all flawed. And whether they intended to do something or not, for us to move on in health, we have to release them, forgive them. Mm-hmm. So what does that even mean? I mean, because we talked about this the other day, the only person that forgives and forgets is God. Like, it talks about he casts our sin as far as the east is from the west. When we ask for forgiveness, he doesn't even think on those things anymore. But he's God and we are human and we dwell. We dwell. We just don't forget. Yeah. We don't forget. Yeah. And I want to acknowledge that that's okay. Yeah. Because I think the other day when we were talking, I was struggling with, why is this coming up for me again? Like, I was good. Like, mm-hmm. I really did. I had this release of forgiveness, and I'm going to let those people go about their life, and I forgive them, and I really am. I'm good. And then I wake up one day, and it's bothering me again. Yeah. Because I have a memory, and their life impacted me, and the things that happened impacted me. And I think that since our conversation, I've been thinking, I wonder if that's what Jesus meant when he was talking with his disciples about forgiveness, and they said, well, how often should we forgive? Like 7 times if somebody hurts us? And he said 70 times 7. Well, did he really mean, 490 times? I think that I used to think of that as if 1 million people in my life today did something to hurt me, I forgive all of them. When maybe he also meant you forgive someone, and then in a week or so, when that memory comes back and it hurts, you choose to forgive them again.
I think so. I think you nailed it with that. And when we were talking the other day, the visual that came to my mind was a wave. Yeah. And I think things come in waves. Life hits you in waves. Like, you have the crest, and then, you hit highs, and then you have the receding like a tide, and you have low moments. And then there's that beautiful space in between where things are kind of chill, right? And I think that forgiveness can be like that, or in my life, it's been like that, like you're describing, where, our memories, the ones that are wired into us so hard, come when there is deep emotion felt. Yeah. So like when you're really angry or you feel betrayed, that's going to sit with you. That's not going to be something that you're going to easily forget. And so I agree with you. I think it is. I think it's something where we have to forgive and forgive again, and not for the other person, but like you described, for ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's that release, Yeah. Sometimes when I deal with challenging things at work or challenging things on our team, and it's time for someone to leave, or just not communicate for a little while, maybe to set some boundaries and whatever. And that happens from time to time. We call it bless and release. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do. We bless that person and we let them go. Mm-hmm. And we want good things for them, and we just kind of move on. And usually it's not something that's that dramatic or hurtful. And so it is pretty easy to sort of just let it go. It go. But I think with the bigger moments, and especially like the people that we're closest to in life, I think they can hurt us more, and we hurt them more because we begin to take them for granted over time. Mm-hmm. Family members, our spouses, even best friends. I think sometimes like it can be really easy to just take for granted that they're going to answer the phone. So when something does happen, when there's conflict there and it does hurt, I do think it's harder, and I do think it requires repetition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, for me, I feel like there's been a little bit of an awakening on my part over this last year. I'm somebody who really is very trusting, and I give people the benefit of the doubt over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah. And have a tendency to miss the pattern sometimes, which is interesting because I'm a pattern seeker. I find comfort in patterns. But I think sometimes in the past I've kind of just close my eyes to certain things because I want to believe the best in somebody, or, oh my goodness, there's so much vested here. Like, oh, they didn't mean that, or I know their heart. I know what they said, but I actually know what they meant. When you find yourself saying those things all the time, there's something wrong. And, I read a really good book about narcissists and narcissism.
Really?
I did. I've actually read a couple over this last year. They talked about, in the beginning when they're setting the book up, they were saying, listen, you're going to be educated on what a narcissist looks like and what their patterns look like and what their impact is. But I also want you to be careful not to... Anyone who is a narcissist, that's not all that they are. And so I really appreciated that it set up this balance of, and kind of opened a door of compassion.
And grace.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's okay. Number one, it was empowering to be able to say, this person in my life is a narcissist. Mm-hmm. And to just say that. But also knowing that's not all that they are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that they're struggling, if that is what they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Internally, they're battling some things, and it's really... a good friend of mine is a psychologist, and we've touched on it a little bit. Obviously, this is not my background, but, she's talked about in talk therapy, they are some of the hardest to treat because it's difficult for them to recognize, due to the nature of, of narcissism, it's difficult for them to recognize and say, this is what I have, because they struggle to take responsibility for the negative impact that they cause to others. They just really struggle with that. And that's a difficult way to live life. I have so much compassion for them because it's like, I find myself taking responsibility for things that maybe aren't my responsibility.
Me too.
And I cannot imagine lacking accountability.
Well, and
I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means on that regard, but I try to be self-aware and I try to be introspective in a way.
That's the thing. How can you imagine living a life so unaware of your actual impact on people?
Right.
And the reason why I bring this up, and I would love to have a real conversation about narcissism in general, because I think it's important, I want someone more qualified than me to shed light on it. But the reason I bring that up is that when we're talking about forgiveness, if you have been victim to a narcissist, it's so much harder because that person, again, is off living their life happy, hunky-dory, like all good.
You don't get a lot of validation.
There is none. And that's where you, at the end of the day, we cannot ever, in any relationship with anybody, get our validation for ourselves in a person, in a relationship, in a job, in a title, because it will never be enough. Because when that thing sinks,
and it will,
or it won't last, or it will transition.
Yeah.
Okay. At best, it will transition. It will change at best. Change is the only constant.
Right. Yeah.
If your identity is caught up in that thing, it's going to make life navigating the future a lot harder.
Yeah.
And so I just want to, I just have such a heart for this topic in general because forgiveness is hard. And I think when we talked the other day, what helped was I kind of felt bad. I felt guilty, like,
that you hadn't finished forgiving them.
Yeah, that I was like, because I seriously was. It was like I'd almost never really experienced that kind of a release before. Like, and I can even say that to the day it was on Mother's Day. A combination of things went together, and I really had this huge release in my heart and a joy and like love them and release. It really was that.
Yeah.
And so then to wake up at 4 a.m. and for it to be bothering me, it was like, did I not do it right?
I love that you just said that. I love that you just said that because I think we all feel that way about tough things, especially forgiveness. Did I not do it right? Like, am I not loving? Am I not praying right?
Yes.
Like all those things, I love that you just said that. It just offers so much empathy for, I think, every woman that I know, because I know we all question ourselves in that way of like, am I enough?
Yeah. Am I doing it right?
Yeah. That was in sync. But yeah, and I think you really have to just keep revisiting it and just really be just as loving to yourself as possible. And I know that for me, that's something I struggle with. And I don't know if that's a woman thing or a generational thing or a Mandee thing. I don't know. But like figuring out the difference in being selfish and self-centered and giving myself love is something that I personally struggle with. And I don't know if other people do or not, but there were times in my life where I was probably pretty selfish as a teenager and a young adult and very wrapped up in my own world and my dreams and my pursuits and things. There were some pretty difficult things going on around me and my family. And I had a family member that basically called me selfish. And then I had an adult friend of my mom's that for my birthday one year, she gave me a CD that only had one song on it on repeat 10 times. Toby Keith's I Want to Talk About Me. I mean, I think I was like 17.
Which is,
it's
life
an
is
age.
all about you at 17.
It is. It really is. And it wasn't meant to be hurtful. I think it was meant to be funny and maybe offering some self-awareness, which clearly I needed. But most teenagers probably need that too. But figuring out for myself as an adult where that grace line is has been a bit of a challenge. And there are times when I probably have been too driven and too like wrapped up in my own pursuits to see what was going on around me or to love the people in my life that I needed to enough or to reach out to family. I'm not good at that. It's something I'm working on. Extended family, I don't reach out enough. But then, there are other times where I take responsibility for things that are not my responsibility because I'm overcompensating.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's just something that we constantly, like forgiveness, you just constantly have to like repeat. It's a practice.
And I think the misconception is that forgiveness is a one and done kind of thing. And I think that the revelation that we both kind of came to the other day was, it's an ongoing thing. It's kind of like it's like communication in a marriage. It's an ongoing thing. It's like, anything. There is no one and done. I don't know. And I do think, too, that sometimes when things come back, like for me, I'm thinking for some of this stuff to be coming back to me, I was talking to my husband, Bradley, about it. I was like, it's been bothering me again. He was like, well, do you need to go see Holly? I was like, you know what? I might. That might be good because I think as you process through certain things, you get kind of good, but then a different facet of it will turn its head.
Oh yeah.
That's just another facet I need to go deal with. I watched something last night. It was somebody posted it on Facebook. I thought it was really interesting. Now I would like to verify. I'm gonna trust right now, but I'd like to verify that it's an actual thing. But it was someone talking about. It's been discovered that within our actual physical heart, that there are neurocytes that act like brain cells, but they operate apart from your physical brain. So when you process or when you experience an event, you're actually processing it in two ways, with your brain and then physically with your heart. And I thought, man, does that not resonate and validate that we cannot just process things with our heart? Just forgive them. Just if you've got faith.
And our gut, too.
Yeah. And I mean,
sometimes it hits you in different parts of the body. I think that's a really fascinating thought. And I think I know the study that you're talking about. There's a research center in Northern California. I think it's called Heart Math. And I think that may be where that's coming from because I've seen some similar research and information about that, about how connected our heart is to our nervous system.
Yeah. Yes. And I think for me, what I've noticed, maybe that great awakening that I talked about over this last year has been over the last 15 to 17 years, I really have only processed things with my heart.
Oh.
I've only processed things through the lens of spirituality, of being a Christian, of my heart. And I'm only now in the last couple of years beginning to process things
with your mind.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's fascinating. So we could probably dig into more on that, but do you feel like, I want to phrase this carefully because I'm processing it while I'm thinking about it. Do you feel like it's almost like you had a filter around your heart. What I mean is the way you process things, like through a lens or through a box, through a tunnel of you had been only in this one line of thinking and feeling for so long that's all you knew. And so now do you feel like, you called it a great awakening, you feel like your mind is a bit more open to seeing things from a new perspective or from different perspectives?
Yeah, I do. And I think realizing that slapping a scripture on something all by itself ain't good enough.
I like that.
Okay. I do believe that the Word of God is living, active, breathing, that it has life within it. If I am struggling today with unforgiveness and you give me a scripture and that's it, that ain't good enough. Because I need relationship. We were created for relationship. I need that, and I need to feel like I've been seen and validated and that my feelings aren't wrong. They don't make me wrong. They don't make me bad. I need that scripture, and I need somebody to say, I totally understand how you feel or why you would feel that way. You have every right to feel that way. Not your faith isn't good enough because you feel that way. Or the reason, you feeling that way shows that you don't have enough faith.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's a tough place to be.
Yeah.
And an interesting lens, to have been. So do you feel like that's the lens that you've been living through for most of your life?
I think so. I think that for a very long time, I wasn't able or self-aware enough to wake up and say, today I'm dealing with some unforgiveness. I had the feelings, but I didn't have the verbiage for it.
Oh, that's good. Did you get that through going to counseling?
I definitely did.
Okay.
I learned how to label and recognize my feelings as I'm having them by going to therapy, and somebody literally handing me a piece of paper that was split into 2 columns at first. Good feelings, bad feelings. Or good feelings, happy, sad feelings.
Yeah.
It wasn't the full spectrum of like the feelings wheel. It was just very simple. It was literally what they give children. And she gave it to me, and I looked and I went, oh, I'm this. And I used that at home. I kept it in a desk drawer. And when I was feeling just dysregulated and all discombobulated, but I can't tell you how I'm feeling, which is how I'd lived my life for a good 30 years. I'd go get that piece of paper and I would go, oh, I'm anxious.
Gosh, that had to be empowering.
It was, but it's also like, oh, shoot. Like,
how long have I been living like this? Yeah.
Yeah. And
I wonder how many other people are listening that have had a similar experience, Ashley, because I think it's common I think the first time I went to counseling was like when I was 9, maybe or earlier. But my parents divorced when I was 9, and so 8, 9, somewhere in there I definitely went. And I think we played a game that talked about feelings.
Right.
So I was probably exposed to it at a very early age. So I guess picked it up. But I'm wondering how many people are listening and maybe having a similar experience. I should find a link, or if you know of where I can find one, to put in show notes in case somebody's having that reaction of like, I know like 4 feelings: happy, angry, sad, and mad. Like
hungry.
And hungry, which is a real one.
Hangry,
yeah. So, I mean, I think that would be a really good resource to share, but just to circle back to the process of forgiveness and how it's repetition. There's something I learned in a yoga class once. I'm not sure if I learned it in a class or if somebody shared this with me when I told them I was going to yoga frequently, but it came from a yoga teacher, and they said that they approach every class as a beginner. Like you don't get on your mat and just suddenly twist yourself up into a knot. Each class you go through a process of like centering yourself, and then you do some motions that kind of loosen your body up and stretch you out. And then you might progress into something challenging. You might lay down on the floor and rest that day. That's what that practice looks like. And it's why it's called a practice, because you come to it every day differently. Like I can some days hop onto a mat and I can turn myself sideways and make this beautiful half moon pose. And some days I fall right out of it. Other days I can hold it for like 30 seconds and I feel so empowered and strong. But what I love about it is it's one of the places that I feel most, I feel free in there, because the days that I do fall out, I giggle at myself. I don't ask myself, am I doing it right there? Because I've been encouraged every time I've been in that space that this is a practice. You're going to approach it differently every day. Your left side might do something different than your right side does. And all of that is okay.
See, and that right there is such a beautiful, you just painted the most beautiful picture for forgiveness. It is a practice. And some days you're going to fall right out of it. Yes. And some days you're going to stick it, and it's just going to stick, and it's going to be like, yeah,
I nailed it.
And that's just so good. But I think the thing that I think maybe what we're really wanting here is just for the listener and for us to know whatever way it goes today, it's okay. Because the main thing is that you're there. You went into the room. You are approaching that practice. Your heart is to, I want to forgive. I do forgive. I don't, today my feelings feel a certain way, and I forgive. You know, and that's not in a way to overlook how you feel. And then also take note of, like in a yoga pose, if like, man, that left side is awfully weak. Maybe we focus on strengthening the left side. If something keeps coming up that you have forgiven and released, but a piece of it, a facet of it keeps coming up, let's go strengthen that. Let's go put that under the light with a therapist or with a close friend or with a Bible study or all of those things combined, which would be probably the best combination, and strengthen that up.
Yeah.
You know?
It's just data.
Yeah,
you know, I did
exactly.
I did a course with Tony Robbins, and that was one of the things that they kept repeating to us over and over again. Like, having awareness is so key. And so it's like, when you are, like, if you are approaching forgiveness as a practice, it's becoming aware of how you feel about it. Like you're saying, the days you nailed it, the days you didn't. Having an awareness of that gives you data to then later recognize the patterns and figure out where you need to strengthen yourself. Are you feeling angry each time? Or maybe you're feeling sad because you miss what you thought you had before that you don't have anymore.
Yeah.
Like, there can be all kinds of different feelings around it. And so I'm so glad you shared with me what you did the other day, because it's really made me think more about some areas of life where I need to practice forgiveness and where I need to offer some love and just being more generous in ways where maybe I've withheld.
Yeah.
You know? And so I just really appreciate that you brought it up, because I think it's something that not just you and I are dealing with, which is why I thought we should share. But I appreciate your heart. And I appreciate you trusting me to have that conversation.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate you.
The Celebrating Women podcast wants to hear from you. Email us a voice message to celebratingwomenpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear your story or the story of an incredible woman you know. Become part of the conversation on social media. Facebook.com/celebratingwomenpodcast. On Instagram, search Celebrating Women Podcast. The Celebrating Women Podcast has been presented by Hand & Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler, Texas. Book your appointment today. Stop by the spa in Cumberland Shopping Center or online at handandstonetyler.com. The Celebrating Women Podcast is created and hosted by Mandee Montana and Ashley Fisher. Support the show for as little as $3 per month at celebratingwomenpodcast.buzzsprout.com. or visit our show notes. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to the Celebrating Women Podcast.